Problem. So MS-ISAC is funded by the Department of Homeland Security, and basically they're a bunch of geeks in Greenbush, New York. And what they do is they try to be a conduit for information about computer security for SLTT organizations like us, and they provide a lot of services, and you can all join them for free. And if you do join them, tell them that AJ from Bayfield County sent you. And I'll get lots and lots of attaboys. It'll be great. Another notification service is Google's Webmaster Tools, which is now called something else. I forget what Mary told me this morning, but it's gone. So, sometimes your site will get hacked and you won't realize it until you do a Google search for your stuff, and it shows up with a little, hey, your site's hacked, and you're like, and that's no good. But at least you know, right? And when you dial into Google's account, assuming that you've set it up and everything, you'll get information about what pages are hacked, and it'll give you a really good starting place to kind of dig in with some of the tools and techniques that we'll cover here in a little bit. So Securi is an awesome company. We have a rep right here in the midst of us. Wave your hand. Woohoo! So they do great things. They've got web app firewalls, they've got cleanup service, they've got monitoring service, which is why they're here in the monitoring services part of things. And they do a great job. Your ISP is another place they'll tell you you're hacked. Your ISP maybe will say, hey, we've seen an email flood come out of your servers, So at Bayfield County, we had that happen last week. One of our peeps sent out 27,000 emails between 5 and 7 p.m. when she was at home, like kicking back, making dinner. So that was a clue. And then your customers or your visitors will be another really good source. They'll say things like, man, your website looks really weird, it's flashing, or there are these weird ads on. I didn't know that you guys did ads, and they'll look like this a lot of the time. And so that's a good way to tell that you've been hacked. Another way to tell is the actual behavior of your website and your web server. There's a lot of things going on, like defacement. You could have, you could have some random group. You could have anonymous. You could have whatever, put stuff up on your website. You could have slow response. If your server is being overwhelmed sending out spam, your other server processes are going to be dropping down. And one way to look at that is use Pingdom. Pingdom is a suite of tools that allows you to monitor your public-facing outgoing web server statistics. You also need to look at your internal web server stats and performance, and there are other tools for that. So odd behavior, what happens if you go to your home page at bayfieldcounty.org and suddenly it redirects to who knows what, So these are all signs that things are bad. Your disk space could be gone. I'm probably like a lot of you guys, I do websites on the side for other people, and I've got servers out there in the universe, and they're all awesome and super hardened, except for those, little attack entry points that exist, despite the best that any of us do. And just 2 weeks ago, I took 97,000 files off of one of my servers that somebody put out there. They're all HTML and JavaScript and stuff like that. And basically that attack was just, let's put all these files out there and use AJ's server to serve those up into the world, maybe make some money with AdSense or who knows what. And then we've got, of course, the what is that file on my server? Yeah, thanks for the obligatory chuckle. Your check's in the mail. Yeah, so there could be strange names. If you see maxponagenow.php on your server, it's probably bad, there could be a strange location. You could have files showing up in your site root or in a new directory that you don't know how it got there, or in the WordPress site. One of the great places to put that is the uploads folder, because nobody ever checks that. They're like, oh, I've just been uploading images, that's why it's so big. No, maybe not, So a way to kind of get a sense of that is have an idea of what your normal universe looks like, right? So we call that in the security industry a baseline, right? But this is just knowing what's supposed to be there, and if things show up that aren't supposed to be there, if they're weird, if they're strange, if they're out of place, that's a clue. And then the file modification date. So with those 97,000 files I took off, July 2nd, was a really big day for my web server. Who knew? I didn't, but that was a really easy way to find all the files that needed to go. Everything that was touched on July 2nd between like 4 a.m. and whatever it was and on the other side, just take them all and dump them. But don't delete them. Deleting's bad. We'll see why. All right, so that's how to know if you've been hacked. Let's talk about common types of attacks. And just so you know, this is by no means an exhaustive list, right? Because I don't have like 3 months up here in front of you guys. All right, so first is the ISP cat attack. Not really, more obligatory cats. All right, so there are kind of broad categories of attacks. You can attack a server OS, right? Because whether you're running Linux or you're running Unix or you're running Windows, all these systems are vulnerable in some way, shape, or form. And so the biggest vulnerability that we all have is unapplied patches. Who here looks every day at their website for patches? Oh yeah, right? So you're all hosed. Go back, rebuild your servers, all right? This is an excellent chance. No, I'm just gonna keep going. If I have time at the end, I'll show you how I patch all my servers, all my sites, everything at once. It's another pay-for service that only works with WordPress, but I'm sure there's equivalents out there in the rest of the world. It's slick. So we also need to disable unused services. So if you have a server that has FTP enabled on it and you're not using FTP, none of you should be using FTP. FTP is bad. I'm gonna go around the room and slap wrists of everyone who's using FTP. SFTP, good. SSH, good. SCP, good. FTP, bad, right? So, and if you don't know what all these acronyms are, it's just ways of putting files on from one computer to another, right? So if you have FTP enabled on your server, but you're not using it, turn it off. That goes for all the services on your computer. If you're not using it, turn it off. If you don't know if you're using it, Dr. Google. Service misconfiguration. What happens if you have FTP, God forbid, running on your web server and it accepts anonymous connections? That's bad news, right? Because then anybody can talk to your web server and put stuff and pull stuff and do nifty things. So you'll notice a bunch of links. These are all links that, because you all wrote down the URL for the Prezi deck, you'll be able to go back and learn more. Because this is not only a presentation, it's a tool. Server hardening. How many of us have ever spun up a server and just like turned it on and installed my LAMP stack and let's put up our website and look, it works, it's great. I have been there. I've done that I don't know how many times. And then I come back the next day, the next week is like, what happened to everything? And that's because I didn't harden. I didn't turn on firewalls. I didn't reduce the attack surface by turning off those extra services. So web app vulnerabilities. More cats, hacker cat, mean, nasty cat. You got that? Awesome. Onward. So again, patches. Patches, patch everything. Patch it twice. I mean, just for good luck.
Just keep patching.
Just roll with those patches. It'll be awesome. But honest to God, that's the biggest vulnerability and the biggest way to protect yourself with everything is make sure it's patched, it's up to date, because there are really good people out in the world working with all of our web apps and all of our server OSs to look at vulnerabilities and to find ways to patch these things, and they put patches out regularly. I mean, WordPress just came out with what was it, 3.4.1, I think, which patched like 18 vulnerabilities and 2 of them critical, and that's important stuff. If you don't patch, if you're running 3.2 or God forbid 2. something, your server is working for Chechnya, I'm sorry to say. So. Also, another vulnerability in web apps is SQL injection. So who here scrubs their user input on forms? All right, 4 of us, 5 of us. The rest of you need to start doing this, because what happens if you have any part of your website that asks for user input, input goes back and gets parsed by your web server. And if someone is even just the tiniest bit clever, that what they can do is they can insert SQL statements into those forms, and when they hit submit, the server processes the SQL statement and spits back information. So say you enter select star from star, enter. What is that going to give you? Only everything, right? Bad. And cross-site scripting, also bad. So cross-site scripting is a way of inserting information into one site that then redirects to another site. And so this is more kind of scrubbing your input and another link to learn more, right? Code auditing, you hear that from maybe a development shop perspective, but it's important from our perspective too. So I'm not a PHP guy. I'm not very much of a SQL guy. I'm not much of a JavaScript guy, but I have people, right? And so I can go to my people and be like, what do you think? Good, bad, dumb, So it's important to have eyeballs on your code and to have people try to break your stuff. Because if a good guy can break your stuff, and bad guys can break your stuff. And if a good guy can break your stuff, hopefully you'll pay the good guy enough, beer, money, whatever, to tell you how the stuff got broken. So then you can go back and fix it. And then the whole unused code still available. Like WordPress comes with a setup page. Most CMSs come with, the little setup wizard. You go through and you install everything. You're like, oh, this is my database username, my database password, and my database name. And I'm just going to leave that all sitting in a folder conveniently labeled setup. And then the bad guys come along and they're like, ajswebsite.com/setup. And all that comes back up and they own my site. Not good. So if you have code, if you have the setup stuff, if you have some sort of plugins for your website that you're not using, take them off. Scrub your server, make it nice and clean. Detail it like a car that you want to sell today. Password vulnerabilities, another attack. Oh, who here loves passwords as much as I do? Nobody can raise, oh, really? All right. Passwords, I love passwords. So the long and short of it is that there is no short of it, there's only long of it. Long is strong for passwords, right? So passwords work based on hacking a hash. So a hash, just bear with me, this is the only piece of math that we're gonna have today. Hash is a one-way mathematical operation that takes input and runs it through the mathematical operation and comes out with a completely unique string, alphanumeric string on the end. That string changes completely if even one bit of the input changes. So if you have a text file that says hello world, period, and you hash it, you're gonna get a 12, 16, 18, whatever length string on the end. If you do hello world exclamation mark, that string, the hash, is gonna be completely different on the other side. So passwords all get hashed in computers, right? So there's this unique identifier, but I can't see Ron's password. All I can see is a hash of Ron's password when I attack his computer. But if I have a hash on my side that matches the hash on Ron's side, then I know what Ron's password is. So there's that logical connection, all right? So there, I'm done with cryptography for the day. You're welcome. All right, not done with cats, more cats. There are a lot of cats. The cats are gonna get better too. I'm just putting that out there, right? All right, so weak passwords. Weak passwords are things that are short. So by short, I mean less than 10 characters. People will tell you 8 is safe, not safe. This link is a really interesting link, howsecureismypassword.net. You go there, you type in your password if you trust the site. Up to you. You can type in a reasonable facsimile of your password and it'll tell you how long it'll take to hack your password based on a current PC computer, So if you do an 8-digit password, it'll come back depending on your character space that you choose. So whether it's uppercase, lowercase, alphanumeric, symbols, whatever, maybe a day, maybe 2, If you use AJ's passwords, which are 14 characters, that full-on character space, it's like 6 sextillion years. I like that. I like making the NSA have to work more than a week to get my stuff, right? So, dictionary words, bad. And that's any dictionary. That's the Urban Dictionary. That's a Finnish dictionary. It doesn't matter. If there's a dictionary, it exists out there in a form that's useful for cracking passwords. And physical logical sequences. I'm going to give you a list of the top, I think, 1,000 passwords. And what do you think the first one is? Password. And the second one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So QWERTY is on there, you know, just doing stuff across the keyboard, bad. But if you take your hand and you just go wham on the keyboard, good password probably, you know. You just have to wham it the same way each time, right? So easily guessed passwords. You know, we're probably all on social media. We're putting information out there. How many of us have made our Facebook profiles private? All right, so that's like 3 of us, all right? The rest of us, people can come and look at our Facebook profiles and they can learn the names of our significant others, our children, our pets, our, you know, the place that we live, our birthdays. These are all things that we add to some basis of our password to make them more complex and harder to guess. Except when they're not, when we're putting that information out into the world for free, right? Here's the list of most common passwords at the bottom there. So, and reuse passwords, I cry little hot stinging tears every time someone's like, well, I just have one password. I just use it for all my sites because that way I can remember it. It's a really strong password and it's great. And I'm like, oh, come on. So the deal with this is that not all websites and web servers and applications out there are created equal when it comes to security. And so if you're like me and you have 2,000 plus discrete logins and they're all the same password, unlike me, and one of those gets popped, then all of them get popped, and passwords are almost always tied to emails or usernames, some variation thereof. And so then somebody can start going to, oh, Bank of America, R. Pringle, and my cat is awesome, you know? And is that gonna work? I don't know, maybe. All right, I'm almost done picking on Ron. Really close.
Why?
Default passwords. All right, Paulette's next. So default passwords. Really? Admin password? Come on. No. No, 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 no. 1,000 times no. Always change passwords to something good. So one thing I want to add to my password section here that I think is kind of the key to doing this, and this is not in a deck. This is only for you guys in the room and whoever's, hello, watching the video. There's a really, I think, strong, effective way to manage passwords, and it requires remembering 3 passwords in the world. 1 to log into a device, 1 to log into Dropbox, and 1 to log into your password manager. So I use KeePass, and I put my KeePass database into Dropbox so it syncs across all my devices, and that way when I'm on my computer and I log into Paulette's cat appreciation website with a random username, because, you know, if I'm going to randomize my password, I can randomize my username, and the password manager remembers everything for me, right? See where I'm going with this? So I log in there, I save my credentials, it gets distributed across all my devices via Dropbox, and then when I'm on my phone and I'm hanging out in the airport, I'm like, oh, Paulette had this great site, I got to log back in, you know, and leave comments, and then I can just pop that in and it does auto type for me, so I can just go to the site and be like, insert my stuff, and it's great, and I can have a 30-digit password that'll take forever for the NSA to crack, and it's awesome, right? So KeePass, Dropbox. That's the key to doing long, strong, unique passwords for every single login. So like I said, I've got more than 2,000 discrete logins in my world. That's how I manage them right there, and it's awesome. And if anyone wants to see that in action afterward, I'm happy to show you my passwords. Seriously, because that system makes it super easy to change. KeePass generates passwords. All I have to do is give it the parameters to say, here's my password. I'm happy to show you my banking password or my username. You can choose one, right? But all my passwords are 20, 30 characters. I have no idea what any of them are except for 3. That's awesome. It's great. I love it. Anyway, onward to denial of service. So I almost left off DOS for you guys, but then I was talking to someone last night about it, and he reminded me of it. So here it is. So denial of service basically says, for whatever reason, you can't use your stuff. And yes, I skipped right past the cat. Bad linking and Prezi. Oh well. Can't do your stuff. That's what denial of service basically boils down to. So baby DOS is one person like spewing out pings to your web server, doing something like that. It's a small thing, it's easy to fix, but then you have a distributed denial of service, which is like Anonymous, and their low orbit ion cannon, which has a really cool name, so people download it, they're like, I'm part of Anonymous, and put it on their desktop, and then you get 10,000 people that have the low orbit ion cannon on their desktop, and they're all pinging Ferguson, Missouri's website, which is hosted by Civic Plus, which takes down Bayfield County's website, which is hosted by Civic Plus, because Civic Plus can't deal with the distributed denial of service, and then AJ is frowny. We don't like frowny AJ. But that's what happened to us right after Ferguson experienced their troubles. They got DDoSed by Anonymous, and most of Civic, not all of Civic Plus's clients. Yeah, we all felt the pain there, and that was kind of awesome, and and appreciating the methodology and the intention behind it, but not so great from a hey, my website's down perspective. And then there's the unintended denial of service. What happens if service on your server is hanging, and so your website isn't going? It's denial of service. What happens if somebody unplugs something? Denial of service. So it's a broad category, and there are a lot of ways to deal with that, which we'll get to here. So once you've been hacked, you might want to know what happened, how, and that's a really interesting question, a really difficult question to answer. And the reason it's interesting is because then you know what to fix, and the reason it's hard is because things are automated. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of things happening, and if someone is not doing an automated attack, but they're actually doing an in-person attack, they're probably going to be sanitizing their files. They're going to be cleaning up their tracks behind them, and so it's going to get even harder to see what's going on. So that's why forensics, if you're not a forensic specialist, is dodgy at best. It's kind of a crapshoot, because this dude is doing it, right? So forensics means that you're working on a compromised system to begin with. You don't do forensics on a system that's clean, that's working properly. So you don't know what state your machine is in. You don't know what your services are doing. You don't know, really you can't make any assumptions at all about your machine when you're doing forensics. And the system state may very well be unstable. You might try to SSH into it, and everything might just freeze. You might get kicked out. You might get locked down. Who knows? And every action that we take on a compromised system potentially and probably will destroy evidence. So if you're doing digital forensics and trying to actually build a legal case, if you're trying to collect evidence and trying to really have a rock solid record of what you did, what happened, then you really want to be careful with what you do, because even powering on a machine, even just browsing directories, that could potentially alter timestamps and access stamps, and then you're going to be a little out of luck if you take that back to a judge at some point and say, well, this is what happened. Well, the judge is going to ask you to prove it. So I was talking with somebody last night who was talking about getting hacked and how the hacker is going behind and cleaning up log files, and they finally dumped their log files from the hack server to a log file server, and that made it so that they could actually see the logs and see what was going on. But if it's an automated attack, you're not going to have to worry about sanitized log files. But if it's Paulette in your computer, she's going to be going along, and in the access log, it's going to say, well, Paulette logged into your computer at 12:08 p.m. and then she's going to be like, delete. Paulette was never here. And this all leads to this question, which is that's the most important part of digital forensics. Like, what can you prove? We can all suspect things, but what can you actually prove? So, little story. Scary hacker story number one, sort of scary, has a happy ending though. We all like happy endings. This hacker story is kind of a Disney hacker story. Bayfield County got hit by a crypto wall variant maybe 4 months ago. Somebody opened an email and clicked on the thing, and then crypto wall locks, it encrypts all the drives that your computer has access to. So in her case, it was 4 drives shared by various people in the county. And when we saw that those drives got locked, we're like, ah, you know, and then we ran in little circles screaming for a couple minutes, and then we stopped, and we're like, okay, so let's figure this out. We can, because of how our shared drive structure works, we track down who actually clicked. So we called her up and was like, you were naughty? When were you naughty? You know, and she told us, well, I was naughty about an hour and a half ago. You know, and so we kind of worked back, and we had a pretty good idea of what went on, and we used our backups. We just, you know, rolled out our backups and restored, and life was good. So we had a local business, get hit by the same thing about 3 weeks later, and their story is not so happy. So what CryptoLocker does is it's ransomware, right? So it encrypts all your stuff. It sends you a notice saying, hey, you need to pay a Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoins to this address. And if you don't pay within a week, then the ransom doubles. And for those of you playing along at home, a Bitcoin is about $750 these days. So it also takes between 6 and 7 days to set up a Bitcoin account, fund it, and get to the point where you can actually transfer that money. So basically there is no pay in that window unless you already have a Bitcoin account set up. I don't know, how many people here have Bitcoin accounts? Yes, I'm the only one. And the only reason I do is because we got hit by CryptoLocker, and I was like, maybe I should have a Bitcoin account just in case. So I made one, you know, it's not a big deal.
But do you have Bitcoin in your Bitcoin?
Not a one. But I can fund it quicker than 7 days, so that's okay. But yeah, this business got hit. It's a little surveying company, you know, it's like 10 employees, and they lost all their everything. They lost records for years and years because they had backups on a USB drive attached to the infected computer, which got encrypted. Oh no. Yeah, so it was sad for them, you know. They paid the ransom, and do you think their computer got unencrypted after they paid the ransom? Nah, not so much. They had to start all the way over. Okay. Oh, the final bit of advice for you guys with doing digital forensics. If you're gonna do forensics, if you're gonna go down that path, don't touch anything, get a pro. And so MS-ISAC that I talked about before will do digital forensics for cheap if you're a member. And there are lots of people out in the world who will do digital forensics for an exorbitant price. You don't have to be a member. So it's up to you. When you're getting a pro, try to find someone who knows what they're doing. That's a good place to start. Because they'll have the right tool set. You know, digital forensics is a really specialized thing. It's, you gotta start by making a bitwise copy of the entire hard drive of the infected computer, and that's the very first step, and that's a pretty good one to manage, you know? There's neat stuff out there, but this is really why to get someone else, because it's someone else's problem. You know, if you hire security to do forensics, I don't know if they do or not, but that's Tony's problem. That's good when it's somebody else's problem. You know, so MS-ISAC again. All right, so cleaning up. This is the actual how you unhack. Now that we've understood how to understand when you're hacked, and you know what attacks look like, and stuff like that. So we're getting into the money stuff here. So scan and remove, you know, this is the first step. This is what I do the first time, every time I go to one of the computers that is in my world that I'm responsible for. I use Malwarebytes. I use the heck out of Malwarebytes. I should own stock in Malwarebytes, except that I don't actually pay for Malwarebytes because I have a free download and it works awesome. And you just download it and update it and run it, and it takes stuff off, and then you run it again, and it says, hey, everything is good, and then you go back and life is good, right? At least for a desktop system, you know, for a low penalty for failure system, that works really well. For your server, which is a little more high penalty for failure, it's a good place to start for sure if you're running IIS, because this is only for Windows machines, not for Linux machines. But bootable Ubuntu, the link is actually information about how to use a live CD version of Ubuntu in a rescue sort of capacity. Long story short, You boot an entire OS either from a DVD or from a USB stick. You boot that on the compromised system. You use that booted environment to go through and remove, remediate, clean up, restore, other things that start with R. And Rootkit Hunter is another great piece of software that just fires up, it boots up on a computer. So rootkits, for those of us who don't know, who haven't spent the last 3 years with their head in this stuff, a rootkit is software that installs itself in the root, in the base files of the OS. It burrows in, it hides really deeply, it doesn't get detected by normal things like malware bytes. And it's a real lovely thing to have to deal with. There's really only one way to get that off. But the money slide right here, this next one, is not the way to remove a rootkit. What these are your 4 ways that you're going to deal with your Linux servers. So how many people here running some version of Linux, Unix, whatever for their web server? How many are running Windows? Oh, really? Interesting. Well, the good news is that all these things work in Windows too, but I'm not going to tell you how to do them in Windows because I don't know, and because you have Google, and because there are GUIs for doing it, right? So this first one is comparing files in 2 directories. So with my WordPress websites that got hacked, I was like, I have no idea what files got touched, what didn't. You know, I went through and I looked at file modification dates, I looked at names, stuff like that, but then I downloaded a perfectly clean copy of WordPress from wordpress.org, and I just did a comparison, you know, line by line through the whole directory tree of the good stuff versus the suspect stuff. And that gave me an output of, oh, these things are all different. So now, of course, my WordPress, you know, just the base WordPress would have a different update status, and it'd have changes that I've made. So I have to still go through and eyeball things, but that's a really great place to start. You know, that'll say, here's a list of 10,000 things that are different, you know, and start looking at it. And you don't have to really go and do a line-by-line comparison. You can kind of scan and say, oh, I know that, and I know that, and I know that, and I don't know this. You know, you can just go through it like that. Second one is last modified. One thing I want to tell you about this is the commands that you want to type start here, and the little squiggles, you replace that stuff with your directory names. But these commands you can all type in verbatim on your Linux servers, so 5 of you that have them, and you'll get there. So last modified date, biggest size, you know, if you want to be like, what's using all my disk space? The biggest size one is really good. And then just looking for, once you find a pattern, because all hacks are going to follow some sort of pattern, once you find that pattern, then you can start just eyeballing it and figuring out what's going on. So restoring from backup is kind of like level 2 in fixing stuff. You know, if your scan and remove doesn't really work, if it doesn't do it, scan and remove is going to be faster. You're going to lose less work, and it's going to be less certain to be clean, right? Because how do you know that you've gotten everything? How do you know that there's not a backdoor that still remains unpatched and available? And restoring from backup isn't going to help with backdoor, but it's going to, if you have a known good backup, if you have a system that you built all the way up, you know, you patched it fully, and then you backed it up somewhere, and those backups are offline, they're untouchable, you know, they're on tape or disk or whatever they are, you know, then you can use those and roll back and you go back to that point in time. That's good stuff. But it requires good backups. You got to be able to trust them. So to make good backups, you got to have a backup schedule that makes sense. And here are the 2 main backup schedules out there. It's Towers of Hanoi and Grandfather, Father, Son. You know, so I don't know if those mean anything to you, but learning is good. And then you got to test the restores. You got to take your backups and you got to restore to a different directory. Make sure that the stuff actually works. You know, you got to every once in a while just try to rebuild your stuff from scratch, from bare metal or from, you know, just a fresh lamp stack. You know, not on your production server, thanks, on a different server. But you got to test them out and make sure that they work. Because just speaking from experience, there's nothing worse than saying, I've got great backups. Oh. Yeah, that's sad and frustrating. And then you gotta plan for the logistics of the restore, right? So like, how long is it gonna take? Do you have to drive somewhere to get your known good copies? I mean, how's that all gonna work? So just kind of have that plan in mind. for backing up, because it can be really easy and it can be really a pain in the butt, and it's usually somewhere in between. So nuke and pave is really the only way. It's if you really want to be absolutely sure that your stuff is golden, that the infected things are gone, you gotta start all the way over, bare metal. You gotta to really do it right, you gotta wipe the drive. You gotta take like active disk, kill disk, something like that. You gotta wipe your drive. You gotta start all the way over. And it's work, it takes time. And it's good, you know, if you have a base image, this is kind of like, it's like backups, but a little bit different. Who here runs imaging on their server? Who has server images? 4 of us, yes, go team. The rest of you guys definitely want to look into images. So an image is just a bit for bit copy that you can just go and restore. And it takes, you know, it's pretty much the same as doing a rebuild, except all that work is done and you can just go back to whenever you took that image, right? Oh, and one thing about the imaging thing here, Clonezilla on the top, free, pretty awesome, kind of ugly, but works pretty well. Test your images. I've tried to image laptops a few different times, and kind of más o menos with that, you know? It's yeah, think about it. And Windows has built-in imaging. It's called Windows Backup. So if you go into the Windows Backup wizard, you know, there'll be, eventually you'll get to a point where you can make a backup of Windows, and then you can make an image, and then where do you want to put the image? Somewhere safe, right? And document what you do with your build. So document it the first time, not like me, like where I waited until about the 4th time I had to build the stuff. I was like, what did I do? Man, I wish I'd written this down, right? So it doesn't have to be fancy. My documentation lives in a wiki on my laptop, right? So it's just a line of, I have Apache installed. This is how it's configured, you know, and then just stuff like that. Because then when I go back to rebuild, it's all there, and I can just be like, what do? I follow AJ's instructions, and I just rebuild. And documentation is one of those things that we tend to overlook, and we'll save our butts when we're kind of in a bind. And really at the end of the day, this whole process is a learning process. We're all kind of out of luck when it comes to being hacked, because if someone really, really wants to hack Bayfield County, they're gonna, right? There's nothing I can do to prevent someone hacking me. Anything that's built by humans can be broken by humans. There is no such thing as a secure system that you can also use to do anything. If you can touch the system, if the system connects to anything, it's vulnerable. And if someone wants to spend enough time and money and energy, they're gonna own it, you know? And so what we do is we do the best we can, we do better. I make Bayfield County as hard to hack as possible, so hackers attack me, they're like, I don't know, this is kind of hard, let's go attack Paulette's site. And her site's like, I don't know, it's kind of hard, let's go attack Ron's site. And they're like, woohoo, you know? So, sorry, I wasn't quite done all the way. All right, so this is how we do better, right? So we've moved from kind of cleaning up the basics of that into how are we gonna secure our stuff better, right? Are you ready for it? Those of you who have sunglasses might wanna put them on right now. Just fair warning, because the awesome, behold, yeah, right? So some of you follow me on Facebook and you're lucky enough to have a sneak preview, but for the others, you're welcome. All right, so one way to do better is to build to standards. There are lots of really smart, talented people out in the world who have spent a lot of time thinking about how do I secure my OS, my web app, my whatever it is. And they have lists out there of how to do all this stuff. And the National Institute of Standards and Technology is one place that is only like 5 or 6 years behind. It's the federal government. Give them a break, people. It's okay. But that's a great place to start, you know? Another great place that's more up to date is the Center for Internet Security, which is kind of, they live together with MSISAC, you know, they're There are 3 organizations that kind of share the same website and house and whatever. Center for Internet Security has downloadable benchmarks that you can go and download as, I think they come as PDF files, but they also have a little benchmark app that you can use to run against your servers, and they'll say, well, here are the things that you need to do, right? So good stuff there, and those are free. You don't have to be a member of anything to go get those. You just need to fill out a little form, try SQL injection against them, see if they're secure or not, and then you'll have it. SANS is a computer security training organization that's kind of the thought leader in the security space, and they've developed these 20 critical controls, which their marketing spin on the 20 controls are, hey, these are really easy wins that everybody should do. So I'm here to tell you that the 20 controls are awesome ideas, and SANS provides 0 guidance on how to implement them, which means that it's a pain in the butt to sit down. Like for instance, the first control is having an inventory of what's actually on your network, right? So you're talking about physical devices. Well, actually, the first control is just physical devices. I want to know computers and networking equipment, right? And so my network is tiny. Bayfield County totally has 13,000 people in it. We have 200 users, we have maybe 300 devices, and getting an accurate, ongoing, up-to-date inventory of physical devices, I have no idea. It's hard because stuff changes all the time, and we're not even talking software, we're just talking physical stuff, right? So the 20 critical controls are a great idea. It's a good read, go through the list and be like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I should figure out how to do that. Yeah, we should all figure out how to do it. There's stuff there that's easy to do that we can figure out, and there's some stuff that it's a lot. There's a lot there. Change management is important, right? So what change management means is, all right, what's my strategy for patching? How do I know if I've tested the patches enough? How do I know when it's time to apply patches? Change management for me looks like, oh, there's a patch, put it on. Oh, look, it broke, take it off, and that's my change management strategy. It's not a great one, I don't recommend it, except from a perspective of all of my stuff is patched really, really quickly. And it breaks very, very seldom, right? But when it breaks, it's kind of spectacular. And those are the times that make me think, maybe I should have tested, but I didn't. So change management is basically saying, what's going to be my process? What sort of level of risk am I willing to accept versus, what sort of level of protection do I want to have? Yeah, so it's good to think about for sure. It's even better to do. Integrated security means something. I forget what. I think I'm going to talk about other ways to secure stuff, like using firewalls, right? So who here has ever touched a firewall? Yes, more hands, that's good. So there's this overriding thought in security that says there's no one way to secure everything. What we need is security, defense in depth, right? So that means that we layer different stuff together to make a security lasagna that a hacker has to eat their way through to get to the good stuff, right? So we start with firewalls, and we have firewalls at the perimeter of our network. Those are the ones that we're probably used to. We have firewalls on the actual computers. Our actual workstations should have firewalls on them. Our servers should have firewalls. They should be configured really tightly, because especially our servers, we know what we're building the server for. We know it's a web server. So do we want to allow SQL traffic to go through it? Do we want to allow RDP traffic? Do we want to allow HTTP? Maybe we only want HTTPS, right? So lock it down as much as we possibly can. So IDS, IPS, this is intrusion detection or prevention systems, right? These are software and hardware devices that are supposed to say, you're being attacked, do something, right? And what they actually say is, hey, we think you're being attacked, we think you're being attacked, we think you're being attacked 10,000 times a day. And you gotta tune them and kind of decide what is actually something that you want to pay attention to and what's something that's normal or that you don't care about, right? But it's good. Alerting is good, especially if your email inbox feels a little skinny. You know, if you feel like you need more messages, this is a great way to go. Antivirus is dead. Or maybe not. It depends who you talk to. But put antivirus on your computers because really, you know, if there's old something floating around the internet and it comes to your computer and it infects you because you don't have antivirus, that's kind of dumb, right? Because the antivirus is free, it's easy, you know, or it can be really expensive and really difficult, like, you know, McAfee's enterprise software that we use. You know, that's a whole lot of fun. Thank you, McAfee. I needed more work. But antivirus is good to have, right? So the reason I say antivirus is dead is because antivirus is always in an arms race with attackers. So the attackers makes exploit 1, and McAfee is like, ooh, look, a new exploit. I'm going to write a patch, and I put out a patch, and AJ patches, and then the hacker's like, exploit 2. Ooh, look, exploit 2, a patch, AJ patches, exploit 3, you know, and it's on and on, it's never ending, you know, there's no way to get ahead, right? So antivirus will protect you from known stuff, which is good. Firewalls will also protect you from known stuff, which is good. And this is what we call defense in depth, right? So we have all these different layers. Oh, the one cool thing about antivirus, and actually firewalls and all this stuff, don't put the same brand, kind, configuration at each layer of your network, right? So if, like for instance, Bayfield County, we use McAfee AV on our workstations. We use a different AV out in our network or on our servers, because that way, if something gets through one version of AV, it might be picked up by the other one. Or the whole stack might just get lit on fire and crumble to ash. I don't know, it's possible. It's happened more than once. Oh, important things about antivirus. The most important thing, brand doesn't matter. The stats of detections versus infections doesn't matter. What matters is that your antivirus automatically updates and that it scans files on access. That means that if a file is touched by any process in a computer, be it a human-initiated process or a system-initiated process, that file gets scanned. And that right there is the only thing that makes antivirus useful, is having an update and actually scan. All right, so DMZ is a demilitarized zone for your network. That means that there are 2 firewalls. There's a firewall up here and a firewall here, and way down here is our internal network. This is where a SQL server lives, and where the payroll server lives, and where all of our common drives live. And in the middle here, in this kind of no man's land, this is where our public-facing servers live. This is where our web server lives and where our proxy server lives. And that way, when people come in and they hit the web server, there's still another layer of firewall, different brand, different configurations, that they'd have to get through to be able to get to the actual inside part of our network. And so things that go in the DMZ are very much secure. They have a very small attack surface, and they have very up-to-date backups. They have good images, and they get replaced a lot because they're the ones that take the brunt of attacks a lot of times. Least privilege is a really important idea for preventing the spread of bad actors, malicious software through your network. Who here has administrative access to their computer? Who can install software at will, remove software at will? Oh, you guys are done. Just stop. Make yourselves, you have administrative access, make yourselves regular user accounts, you know, and use those for your day-to-day stuff, and log in as admin when you need to do something. So you probably can't tell, I'm running Linux here, and Linux does this by default. So, and then I'm running Ubuntu specifically. So when I want to do system level work, I have to go and explicitly tell my computer, I want to do system level work. And the computer says, give me your system level password, and I do, and it's good, and then I'm done. And I get locked out of that access level and go back to a regular user. And that's what we should all be doing all the time. Because if we're running as an administrator, if our computer gets infected, then that infection, that malware, also has administrator level privileges, right? And it can do administrator level things, like lock your network. Thank you, Crypto Locker. So remember the distributed denial of service attacks with Anonymous and whomever. So this is how we get around that. We use a content delivery network. There are other ways to deal with a DDoS attack, but this is an easy one. Use Cloudflare. It's free, it's easy, it works, yay! So basically what it is the CDN replaces your DNS settings so that when people look up bayfieldcounty.org, they actually go to Cloudflare's servers, and notice I said servers. There are a bunch of servers. Cloudflare has I don't know how many, more than 10, around the world, all with copies of our website on it. Or at least it would if we didn't go through Civic Plus. But this is how it works, bear with me. So when Ron is in Colorado and he hits bayfieldcounty.org, and I know he does this every day because I can track you, I'm watching you. So he comes, he hits one of Cloudflare's servers, whichever one is closest to him. You know, when someone from the East Coast hits bayfieldcounty.org, they do another Cloudflare server. So to do a DDoS of that, which is, so basically the DDoS attack, remember, is just flooding my connection so that my website doesn't show up at all. You know, the attacker would have to flood 10, 12, 20 servers all at the same time. Almost impossible. Not totally impossible, you know, anything is possible, but it's not probable to have all those servers go down. So you know, someone can spend all sorts of time and money and effort to DDoS my site on a Cloudflare server, and it's probably not gonna work. And did I mention it's free? Yes, free is good. And say it with me, people, patch all the things. Thank you. So patch your OS, patch your web apps, patch your services, patch your third-party apps, and this is how you do it. So for those of us in a Windows environment, WSUS is the Windows Server Update Service. That's a really catchy title. I kind of want to wrap my car with Windows Server Update Service. That'd be awesome. But that's how you manage patches centrally in a Windows environment. And Nanite Pro is how I choose to manage my third-party apps. So it's like $20 a month for me. It's based on the number of seats that you're doing. So if you just have like your workstation and your web server, it's probably going to be a couple bucks a month. I use this across my entire infrastructure. And the way that it's set up, it's a Windows environment program. It's scriptable. So I've written a script that basically says all the things that Nanite supports that you can find on all of Bayfield County's computers, update them silently in the background. Don't check any of the boxes that say, hey, would you like to make Ask your new search engine? You know, do it on a regular scheduled basis. Dump all the results of this whole operation into a CSV in this place, and then email me when it's done. And so, you know, once a week I get an email saying, hey, you're updated, and I can go look at the CSV and be like, worked, failed, worked, failed, worked, you know, and just go down, and then I have a smaller list of things that I have to deal with, you know, those failures. So 9.8 for the win. And then the bottom line is for you cool kids who are running Linux. All right, so remember I was talking about a sign of being hacked is your web server takes a performance hit. It does strange things. How do you know? You know because you monitor. And this is how we monitor. We use System Center for Microsoft people. It's a little expensive, but if you're just doing a couple of things, you know, maybe you can talk to your friend and be like, can I borrow a copy? I didn't say that. That's what my friend told me to say. Yep. Or you can use Nagios, which is free and open source and kind of a pain to set up, but you only have to set it up once. And then it gives you all sorts of awesome information. Like, hey, you know, your server's mostly up, but your HTTP service, your Apache server, is really kind of hammering away. You might want to take a look at that. You know, so those are useful things to know. You want to monitor maybe your network. And now I'm moving more from like security as a web person into security as an overall thing, right? But these are things that you can take back to your shop and kind of talk over with other people who do these parts. So your network, you know, if someone is sending out 27,000 emails after work, You want to know. You want to have a way for your network to say, AJ, something is happening. Look at me, right? You want to monitor your web apps, and your website. And these are 3 great ways of doing it. So Pingdom, I've talked about. Status Cake basically says your website is up or down, and here's the response time for it. And you can look for particular things on your page. If there's a word on your page that, like there's a piece of text or something that loads last, or it's a hidden whatever that loads, you can have Status Cake look for that, and then it can alert you. It can send texts, which is pretty nice. It also integrates with Pushover. I don't know if any of you have heard of Pushover, but that's a little service that just kind of forwards information on from one place to another. Kind of neat. And then Monitor Us is just another version of that. Just take a look at them and decide which one you like. You want to have a way to know when your files get changed. And there are some files we don't care about, right? We probably don't want to be alerted every time our log files change. Probably not. I don't know. It might be fun to just see how many emails I get in 24 hours, but that'd be a lot of deleting. We probably don't want to know when somebody uploads an image into the media folder of our website, right? But if something changes in the root of the folder, probably want to know. Okay, so that's it. All done. Grumpy Cat. And for those of you who didn't get it in the beginning, one more time, that's where this deck lives. Please share that URL with whoever you think needs it. This is by no means proprietary secret information, except for the parts that were. So put it out there into the world. That'd be awesome. So Q&A, anyone have questions? We all totally overwhelmed? All right. Scary hacker stories. Number 2, AJ was a bad boy. So those of you who know me know that I like driving to these conferences. This year the drive was kind of far, so I flew. And I had an aisle seat on my 3-hour leg, which is really nice for someone who's as tall as me. And there's a lady 8 rows ahead of me who, about 2 hours in, opened her laptop in front of me without any sort of screen cover or anything. And I was like, ooh, I'll bet I can play the guessing game. I'll bet she's gonna run Windows. And it came up with just a blue screen, nothing on it. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be Windows 8. And sure enough, the tiles came up, and then she connected to Wi-Fi on the plane. And I'm like, oh. And then she opened her corporate email on the plane with AJ's shoulder surfing her. Now, I was 8 rows back, so I couldn't read her screen, right? But I could tell based on, just the shape of things as corporate email. And then she opened her private email, and then she went to Facebook. And what she had there with those 3 things open is she had corporate credentials, she had credentials, and she had her social media, which has all the information that she's put out there about her life. So if someone wanted to be malicious and hack her on the airplane where we're all crammed together, that would be a really easy thing to do. So when you're flying home, look behind you for me. Maybe don't log into all that stuff. And so the next level of scary hacker story is, okay, so if AJ wanted to be a really bad boy, and we're flying on the airplane, and the airplane has in-flight Wi-Fi, right? We could do a little ARP cache poisoning, which would kick everybody off the airplane's Wi-Fi. And then I could set up a little man-in-the-middle server so that when everybody connects back to the in-flight Wi-Fi, that's the SSID being broadcast by my computer, they'll connect to my computer, I'll pass along their traffic to the actual in-flight Wi-Fi, and then all their traffic flows through my computer. And I don't understand why this isn't a thing for people. I don't understand why there aren't hackers out flying across the country doing this stuff, because airplanes are full of business people doing work on our flights. So the way to get around this is easy, right? So protect your screen from people looking over your shoulder, and use a VPN connection to attach out to the world. Use in-flight Wi-Fi, but attach via the VPN, because that way your tunnel is encrypted. And it's encrypted not between your computer and the Wi-Fi point, but between your computer and a known endpoint out in the world. So when I'm on my computer here in the hotel, I'm on a VPN. My phone is on a VPN. I use private internet access. It's $5 a month. They're like, yeah, there's one too, XPN. You know, private internet access is like $30 a month. They've got servers all over the world. So if I want to surf the web from Romania, Bob's your uncle. If I want to surf from Chicago, I can. You know, here I'm connected to California. And the reason for that is that encrypted tunnel can't be broken between my computer and a VPN server. If it is, then my internet connection also fails. And my computer's like, hey, VPN's gone, right? So that's a pretty awesome thing to do to protect yourself. But it's those easy attacks, those ones that are like, just don't be showing your computer to the whole world. You know, when you open it up and you do stuff, if you're in a public place and there are people behind you, don't log into your corporate email. Just, you know, stuff like that. All right, so that's scary hacker story. I was gonna show you guys how to update all my WordPress sites in one place. But before I do that, Paulette has kindly reminded me to fill out your evaluation cards, all with 5 stars. I want lots of gold stickers. Yeah, do you guys want to see the how to update all my WordPress stuff in one place? Okay, let me see if I can do that for you. Oh, you'll get to see 2 cool things maybe. All right, so Prezi, oh, come here. I gotta do this backward now. There we go. Let's make you a little smaller. That's good. That's a good start. And let's go here. All right, and this is, I'm gonna go to, so I use this service called iThemes to do this. And you're also gonna get to see my awesome password management system here, hopefully. I'm just gonna turn around so I have a fighting chance at doing this in a way that makes sense. Oh, I can't see my things. There we go. All right, so maximize that. Come on. All right, I gotta do this off screen there, but I'll bring it over, don't worry. Please don't fret. So I'm just opening KeePass here. And let me bring it over to the screen where you can see it. There we go. So this is what it looks like. This is the database that I'm opening up, you know, where I've got all my stuff stored. Here's my password for that action. Oh, I'll open on the other screen, so I'll just drag that over. All right, so in KeePass, go away. I just search for iThemes. There it is, right? And then I put my mouse cursor there in the username field, and I come back to KeePass, and I say, hey, KeePass, auto type. And it enters all my stuff, and there's my 20-character password. And this is iThemes, and I've let it sit for, I'll say like maybe 30 hours. Yeah, so you can see there are some things that are yellow, one that's red that's not connected, and some things that are green. And it's saying, hey, there are 8 updates across all those sites. And the way that I update those is I go here and I say, update selected. Yes, I'm really sure that I want to do that. And it's going to go and update things. Yellow changing to green, green is good. And here I am updating 8 WordPress sites. Look, Ma, no hands. Awesome, I don't have to log into anything. This service, I want to say it's like maybe 40 or 50 bucks a year, which is awesome because my clients pay for it, you know, and it's good stuff. And then you can just add, you know, more sites as you go. I think they do it in like groups of 10 sites. So I don't know if there's something like this for Drupal or any of the other CMSs out there. I would assume probably that there are. What's that? Drush? Cool.
For Drupal, yeah. I'm not sure about Drupal.
So here we go. I'm all patched. Life is good. So let me just show you my KeePass database, and you can see why I love it so much. So these are my websites, right? And I'm just going to show you my mom's website, one that's representative of the way I'm building websites these days. All my websites that I build have at least 5 distinct sets of credentials for them. You know, there's a root database, there's a database user, there's a WordPress admin, there's WordPress user, you know, and so each one of these logins has very complex passwords. I have no idea what they are. You know, let's take a look at this admin password, just for grins. So there's the username, right? Because we don't want it to be admin. Oh, that's right, that reminds me of one thing I was gonna show you. I have websites that are under attack, and I haven't stopped the attack for you guys. You're welcome. I'm very excited about that. It's kind of a cool thing. So that's what the password looks like for this username. And the way I got that username was literally banging my hand on the keyboard. That's how I do it, man. That's how I roll. It's guerrilla style. All right, so let's see. You get to see my Gmail. So let me just make sure that there's no incriminating evidence. No, that's fine. All right. So what you're seeing here, these WordPress alerts with a 2 and 100 and 100 and 100 and 100, what those are alerts from security saying, hey, somebody is trying to log into your stuff, right? And this is the IP address that they're logging from, and this is the username that they're trying to use to log into my site. And the reason that this does not concern me in the least is that you saw what my usernames look like. There is no username test. You can try to log in all day long, I don't care. There's no user named admin. There's no user named user. There's no user named guest. There's no user with any sort of username that can be found in any dictionary because, again, guerrilla style, right? And so I just let these things stack up, and it's nice to know that I'm being attacked. And sometimes I go and I track the attacks and see where I'm being attacked from. And Eastern Europe is a lot. You know, that's where I get it. And they see WordPress out there, you know, they can tell it's WordPress, and then they just go and they try to brute force. And they try to guess my passwords. And good luck, suckers! It's not gonna happen. So that's one of the alerting bits that I was talking about. So I know I'm under attack, and I know that the attack has no chance of working, and so I'm okay with it. And it's good for show and tell. So. All right, so now you guys have had like 15 minutes. Oh, Paulette's clapping. That's a preemptive clap. So if anyone has questions, they want to ask me stuff, I'll hang around for a couple minutes and drink water. But otherwise, hand in your stuff in the back. Susan.